So I watched the 4th episode of One Punch Man Season 3 at 0.5 times speed to see if I could spot every single difference between it and its manga. If you can spot any of these differences yourself, please join the Discord, and you can join the ranks of our armchair detectives who help me point out some of these changes. So buckle in, subscribe, and let's cover all of these differences. So the first major difference is the fact that we don't actually get to see this entire rewind in the manga. We simply see 7 panels of something that happened in the previous chapter or fight. The things that remain the same are the initial impact of him waking up and the reaction shot of him waking up. There's about 7 sequences that were added in the manga, so let's just tot them up straight away. Something I noticed is when he was getting up, there is blood splattering off his back. I'm surprised they didn't add a blood splatter sound effect. They usually do add like that, but here it's just not visible. Also, there is blood dripping down from Garo's nose in the manga, which cannot be seen in the anime, because the angle in which they take it is slightly different. When Garo is standing up, he also just doesn't have the same type of trousers on. See, his trousers in the anime are skin tight to the calf to the bone, but in the anime he still has those bikie trousers on, although they have melded with everything above his belt. The reaction we get when Garo is looking up into the sky initially is an entirely different shot than it is in the manga. Garo says that he got beat by a monster, which is untrue. In the manga he gets beat by monsters because it was Royal Ripper and Bug God, and he also mentions what's going on with his body rather than what's going on overall. The shots they show for reaction shots are slightly different than they are in the manga. The shot when Garo is reacting to the fact that his clothes are molded to his body now. In the manga, it's 2 separate angles in 2 separate shots, but in the anime, not only is Garo facing the wrong direction, but it's also just one panning shot that doesn't even have a close-up. When Garo is cracking his back and then his neck, we can notice that his surroundings are slightly different. There should be a pool of blood behind him and a crater in front of him. Both of these details are not in the anime. He is standing on top of the crater rather than behind it. Not to mention, there's also some barricades that are missing in the left-hand side of the panel. The buildings are also slightly arranged differently. Snack time! My Tokyo Treat and Sakura snack boxes just arrived. These guys are basically little boxes of joy that let you experience limited edition and seasonal Japanese treats right to your home. Tokyo Treat is the fun modern snack, while Sakura is the cozy traditional one. Let me show you them all. This month's Tokyo Treat theme is Fuji Fall Snackscape. So think Mount Fuji vibes, red leaves, and autumn snacks. But honestly, my favorite part of the Tokyo Treat box was the Blinky corn chips. They're so crunchy and super snackable. The kind of thing you finish without realizing they're gone, much like I did. The Sakura box this month is Wonders of Nagayo, which is calmer. Nagayo is all mountains and valleys, and this box actually supports local makers across Japan. You even get Japanese homeware every single month. This time, it was a Saga Shimpo plate, and they give you tea, which my mom stole, much like loads of the food from this box. She couldn't help herself and opened it before I could film anything. This just goes to show you how good these boxes are. My favorite was the Mochi Mugi Senbai. Unbelievably tasty. And as you can see, my mom opened them, so I didn't get to eat them all myself. So if you've been missing Japan or just want autumn snacks delivered straight to your door, grab Tokyo Treat or Sakura Cove and treat yourself to my discount code, Josephu, for $5 off, or click the link below. Thank you again to Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co. for sponsoring this video. That was actually a really good cut. Watching that, and I was like thinking, hell, they might mess up that cut and remove the kind of menace he has, but they didn't. The cut is like perfectly fine and the music fades out really well. My only note is that they didn't really need to add that coloring on his face. The original was pretty fucking good. So instead of cutting straight to Hero HQ, we actually are supposed to cut to the battle site and notice that there is a lack of Garo in it. Then cutting to that panning shot, which is really good by the way, of the Hero Association, and then into the panning shot of Child Emperor. This walking shot of Child Emperor isn't actually in the manga. Instead, we see the walking shot from him behind, and he immediately interacts with Mr. Senegal. The hallway in the Hero Association is shaped very differently. See, there's like elements of it that they've carried over into the anime, but the overly detailed corridor that Murata drew would be hell to adapt into anime. So I can see why they've gone for a more simpler, sleek alternative. In these close-up shots of Child Emperor, in the manga, there's a lack of detail in his eyes that is present in the anime. The buildings in the panning shot in the anime are far more beat up than they are in the manga. I'm not sure if this was simply because a creative liberty or to try better emphasize the fact that this is a rundown hole. This shot of from behind Child Emperor as he is talking is actually meant to be at the start of this monologue, not at the end. They switched it up so that it would grant more space and more transition time between Child Emperor talking and Singal. This initial shot is completely original and it transitions to this panel from the manga. Added detail in the anime. This panning shot has added pipes and stuff to like grant the scene more depth, which isn't present in the manga. These lightning bolts are added in the anime. They are not present in the manga. The manga simply has a black panel. Anime added a shot of when Segal leans up against the wall. In this panel, it is simply a large panel of the scene that's about to take place. But in the anime, they actually use it as a spot to run the dialogue from Stitch, skipping over his stressed reaction shot. The close-up on Sentigal's eyes is slightly different than in the manga. Mainly down to one simple fact, it is a ever so slightly different angle. The next shot is supposed to be a overhead shot of the discussion rather than Stitch's close-up that we see here. So instead of a close-up on the potluck, we actually get a menacing vibe from the outward of Saitama's apartment, then cutting to where everyone leaves their shoes and seeing a massive pile of them, showing that nobody has left his house yet. Then we get hit with a instant full page image of the entire group surrounding the hot pot. Then we get a close-up of the hot pot and then a reaction to Saitama's face, dread, which is very similar in the anime. However, the close-up happens at the start in the anime and not at the end, and is a panning shot in the anime rather than an instant imposing image that's in the manga. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't think they could have adapted the next like 2 panels any better of the hands appearing out of the darkness. Basically one-to-one with the manga with the added emphasis on that star that shines out from the center, which isn't in the manga. Instead, it's just an instant pan to absolute destruction from all these heroes, and obviously King being lacking in the strength department gets blasted away by the shockwaves. This shot of Genos' eye glowing in order to put Blizzard in her place and remove the meat that she's trying to get is entirely anime original. The only shot that is in the manga is the shot of him snatching it and the intimidating panel underneath it, which, by the way, is a far more close-up image, not showing him actually holding the meat that he stole from Blizzard. However, the Blizzard shot is basically one-to-one. I have no notes. Apart from that, the fact that the fire effects around here are kind of a bit jank. One thing I will say is that it's clear that in the manga, in this panel, Silverfang, bang, he's grabbing a whole load of these very quickly, but in the anime, it's quite slow and methodical and like, you know, carnivalic almost. So some of the detail in Saitama's reaction is different. Obviously the background isn't black in the anime, it's gray. I guess this is to show the outline of the character better. Very little line work in the shading when it comes to shadow on Saitama's head to show the menace. Instead they use like just a tone change in color, something that I don't necessarily think was the right choice, mainly because it's also in the wrong place. It's supposed to go above his nose, but in this it covers his whole center of his face. Not to mention the fact that the lines add this like menace to this situation that the circle just doesn't. But they did add a clenched up and pulsating fist to make up for that. In this panel, Silverfang isn't actually in the shot, and his shocked reaction is in addition to the anime. Now here's where I'm going to mention a continuity error in the anime. See, like both creations, we see the empty potluck. Certain details are different, like pepper and salt being in weird places, and a different array of bowls and soy sauce. But later in this episode, they start to eat the potluck again, as if it isn't empty in this shot. So it's just something that they probably did for pacing and time to help display all the information that's being dumped in this shot. But needless to say, it is a continuity error. This shot of Genos is taken from the wrong side. He's supposed to be facing towards the left. All these wholesome vibes are 1-to-1 with the manga. This is another shot that's really accurate to the anime, but they, make use of the fact that they have to use a different resolution, obviously, than the manga panel. So they have Genos, like, pissed off in the corner. Now, in the manga, Genos right here calls Blizzard a bitch, but that's not in the anime. Conic characters, if you ask me, hit him with the B word, come on man, but the rest is more or less the same. And now we cut back to the potluck again. See, continuity error in both the anime and manga here, but they're eating the hot pot here again, even though they already got through it all. So Tama tells Genos to give it a rest after, tells him not to be so rude to the professor, but instead it's done the other way around in the anime. Also, when they have that transaction, it's actually given a panel all its own, but in the anime, it's included in this panning shot. The anime has this close-up of the hot pot again, but that isn't in the manga. Instead, we have this shot of Saitama and Bang both reaching for stuff while we see King in the background keeled over. That's when we cut to this close-up of Saitama and Bang. In the manga, we have a panel of Saitama getting up to see if King is alright, and him leaning over King to see that he's not. But in the anime, we skip over him getting up and cut straight to Saitama checking if he's okay. And in the anime, we get this close-up of King, but in the manga, it's not present at all. Instead, we get a panning shot of the outside of Saitama's apartment, which for some reason is repaired now. These three shots are like more or less one-to-one with the anime to manga. I can't complain. And I actually just have to give credit where credit is due. The shot consistency in these three shots is really good. However, that jump into the hole could use work. I think the walk's much better than it was in the Monster Association previously. The map that they are looking at is much different than it is in the manga. Instead of having a close-up and then a pan to see that Garo is still a long ways out from entering the Monster Association, is just, alongside one of the panels. In the anime, he's actually very close to entering the Monster Association. I feel like this graphic doesn't fully explore how absolutely massive the Monster Association is. See, in the manga, we see a side panning shot of all the levels, but in the anime, we have a above ground shot, a bird's eye view shot, and it doesn't show all the floors in the same detail as before. When Garo is addressing the rest of the monsters, there's supposed to be a panel of him still being a little toady beside Lord Orochi's throne. And we're supposed to get a reaction shot of some of these monster silhouettes laughing and saying, hell yeah, let's go get them. So we're supposed to get a shot of it being dark over City Z and then it being bright over City Z. However, that isn't present in the anime. Instead, we cut straight to Saitama's apartment during the day. Something absolutely unforgivable is not in this scene, by the way. Sure, the shelf is slightly different sized, and so is the table, and so is the TV, but the piggy bank is not in the anime. Unforgivable. This panning shot of the side of the buildings isn't present in the manga. Instead, it's a shot of King's face, and the shop front's destroyed behind him. And this close-up of the back of King's head isn't in the manga either. This is where they include that shot of King walking and the destruction behind him. The dirt on King's clothes disappears in the manga here for some reason, and there's supposed to be a lot more people in the background that isn't included in the anime. Not to mention a shot of a train shooting by to show King still has to travel by train, much like every other person in this city. This shot here is when Murata fixes the problem and actually adds the detail back, which is the dirtiest of his clothes, and that we get to see the logo that's on his hat, which is different from anime to manga. Also, the two people shouting at him are silhouettes in the manga, but in this they are full-blown drawn characters. In this panning shot, we can see that there's a little bit of detail lost with his eyebrows and sideburns, removing some of the detail around his eyes. So this shot here of the donor at the table, the room he's in is totally different than in the manga. See, the chairs are different style, ever so slightly. There's no bands on the back, but also the room he's in is very different. See, the wall and door are in totally different places. There's many screens and computers in the background that aren't present in the manga. There's a few differences here, so let's just tally it up to, I don't know, let's say 7. In this shot here, the chair should be behind him, but it isn't in the anime. Not to mention his nose is an entirely different shape and his eyebrows are far more slick than they are in the manga. This colored panel is not good. It's not good. I actually quite like when they add color to these still images to add a bit more depth to them, but this one is not the play. This guy's begging this man to save his son's life. These are not the colors to represent those emotions. And I think that they initially also agreed with that, mainly because the whole left side of his face is completely different color to the rest of the background behind that area. It's just not the play, man. In this panning shot in the manga, we get to see his fist all the way up to his shoulder, but they obviously have to start lower because this panning shot would be too jarring if it went that distance in such a short period of time. Tornado is pretty damn consistent. Only thing is, in the manga, we get to see a bit of her thigh gap, which isn't present here at all, which is good. I'm not that sort of anime viewer. Also, I do miss the fact that her clothes used to wave around in previous seasons while she was walking, but now they are, very still. It's a little upsetting, but I guess I can put up with it. We see more censorship here with Zombie Man. He's supposed to be smoking as he's walking in and talking, but instead we get a normal panning shot of him walking forwards. They changed the wording here for Peri Peri Prisoner's entrance to remove any indication that he has a intimate relationship with any of the prisoners. In this shot, there's a wide array of differences. Obviously, Super Ally Darkshine's design is changed because, he's not actually black. Atomic Samurai is more or less the same. Same goes for Child Emperor. Lollipop should be a bit bigger, I guess. Tatsumaki should be a little bigger in her placement. Flashy Flash is more or less perfect, except he's lacking in details in areas. Pig God is Pig God. There is a loss in detail in Peri Peri Prisoner's head, and his hair is slightly different. And I think visually you could probably see the lack in detail in Zombie Man's face because he probably was smoking before, and they had to censor that because, no doubt, the publishers. Not to mention, he's missing a belt. This shot of Tatsumaki is far more zoomed out than it is in the manga. You can see her shoulders, but you can't in the manga. We get a side paneling shot of the heroes walking in, but in the manga we get a full-blown overhead shot of all these characters walking towards the desk, showing their full designs and vibe, which is something that is really actually kind of necessary because there's going to be a lot of crap going on in next coming episodes, and we need to be able to see who's who. They adapted these two panels together for whatever reason they've come up with. And here we can see why in the anime they changed the detail in the previous shot with this room. Mainly because Murata didn't keep consistency with this room and the last room. See, in continuity, these two panels, even though they are many pages apart, are the same room. And they don't look the same. Therefore, in the anime, they've made changes to keep the real continuity together. Something very minor, but it's something they did. Also, there should be 2 chairs between Flashy Flash and Peri Peri Prisoner, but there is only one. During this panning shot, they skip over a shot of a close-up of Child Emperor talking about these trackers and the plan. Then it's supposed to switch to Super Ally Darkshine's reaction, and then we're supposed to get the click, click, to Peri Peri Prisoner's reaction to these trackers. Instead, straight from the panning shot, we skip straight to the click click and Peri Peri Prisoner's reaction, skipping over these 2 panels. Also in the shot of Peri Peri Prisoner reacting to the blinker, Flashy Flash is also in shot with 1 chair between him and Peri Peri Prisoner. So this is another example of the anime correcting one of Murata's mistakes. This shot is obviously different than it is in the manga. In the manga, it's a horizontal panel, but here obviously we have more detail in the back and a chair behind him, which isn't present in the manga. This shot here has background that it didn't previously have in the manga. We skip over a close-up shot here and skip straight to the side panning over shoulder shot that we see here. We're also supposed to get a shot from behind the chairs of this dialogue instead of it just being in this panning shot. In the manga, there's a moment of silence to let Tatsumaki's eeriness set in, or power trip sink in, but that's not present in the anime at all. Next comes a scene where Roy Ripper goes and wakes the kids up and says, "Oh, yo, I'm gonna cut one of you motherfuckers up." But instead of this eerie panel of him standing over them and then a close-up shot of their reactions, we get a backward shot of him standing over them and their reactions from behind, so we don't get to see their facial expressions. This close-up shot adds a lot of detail in the anime in comparison to manga. Not so much a lot of animation, there's a little bit, but it adds a lot more detail. I'm actually surprised how much of the detail in this scene is translated to anime really well. However, there's a few differences. The blood is really, really dark. It's not necessarily green, but I'd assume it was supposed to be red. And the panning shot for the entrails and stuff is at a slightly different angle, and the tunnel is supposed to be far smaller and narrower than it is in the anime. See, it's a wide open cavern here in the anime, but in the manga you can see that one of the characters still hasn't even rounded the corner, showing how narrow this area is. This shot looks a lot different in the anime. See, this is a 3D shot. It's fine, it just, much like the ending shot of the final season of Demon Slayer, it doesn't look anime. It looks animated, but it just is an entirely different art style, entirely different medium than what we're used to. And although 3D elements are fine in the background, there is nothing in this shot that is a 2D drawing. It's not what I'd love to see, but I fully understand the budgetary restraints and why this might have been necessary. This is one-to-one with the manga. That would be unfortunate, to be fair. It's slightly more zoomed out, so that's one difference. I would have loved to have seen the animation of him, I don't know, running his blade across a kid's cheek. Not that I'm some form of freak, it's just that I'm here to watch an animation and not a shot-to-shot recreation of the manga. Some of the details in this cell are different. The blood splatters are entirely different patterns, and cracks in the wall are there in the anime, well, they're not there in the manga. We're supposed to cut to a blood-stained corner of the room for this dialogue bubble here. That doesn't happen in the anime. Instead, we get a panning shot of the kid, who's supposed to have a double chin in the shot, but he doesn't in the anime. Sorry, the eye, it's just staring into my whole soul. Added detail of flowing fist and the hand grabbing before he grabs it himself. And the whole added swing that isn't in the manga. Garo's hand is meant to be open in this panel, but it isn't in the anime. There's supposed to be a bit more detail and hair falling down from him blasting Will Ripper's head right off. And I feel like this shot doesn't give enough time for you to actually see the fact that Garo has been stabbed by Will Ripper's right arm. In this close-up shot, we see that Garo is actually holding the blade still. It wasn't in the previous shot in the manga. Something I'll say about when he uses Bomb's technique here is that it's very hard to see that Will Ripper's head is that thing in the top right corner that's getting slashed into pieces. You can see part of his eye, and that is all that you can see. But the rest of the body is pretty okay. It's cut in totally different places, and the pose isn't as dynamic as it is in the manga. Well, that's everything from this episode. Although the chapter is not nearly over, this episode is. And it covered your 89 and 90. Chapter 90 isn't finished yet. We've got most of the way through it. But there's been this many differences in the anime today. Quite a few. And once again, the episode was a mixed bag. But the sequence at the end was pretty satisfying. But if you want to help me locate all these differences for next week's video, please join the Discord, and there is a Discord channel in there just for nitpicking these little minute details. So maybe you could be one of these numbers next week. So if you liked the video, subscribe, and if you're getting Tokyo Treat Sakura Co, make sure to use my link below. And I'm going to start posting members videos for people who want members content. I have a lot of figures up on my shelf, most of which are anime figures, but they're cheap, you know, rip-off figures. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to file down, recoat, and repaint elements of them to make them better quality. So if that's something you're interested in, I'm going to do a stream at some point next week. So I'd love to see you there. Thank you so much for watching again and again. Thank you.